I distinctly remember the moment my body consciousness began. It was 3 years after I'd first developed my eating disorder, and I'd just started secondary school. I'd been living off of smoothies and soup and the occasional jacket potato. Basically anything that was mashed or liquefied was part of my diet because I had this really intense fear of choking on food. Anyway, I was in my first PE lesson and I took off my top, as you do, to get changed into your kit. And one of the boys made an observational remark on how skinny I was. And I kind of shrugged it off. It didn't really matter that much, but then more people started making comments on this. And there I was, in my first week of secondary school, topless, in a crowd of boys with normal bodies being called skinny. And I started to wonder what was wrong with my body. And I started to become more self-conscious. From then on, I started to cover up this horrible body of mine with clothes, and it became an obsession. With t-shirts, the armholes were always so baggy on me and my arms looked so skinny and twiggy, and I hated it. So I'd always try and get the tightest t-shirt possible, but when I did that, it used to make my ribs stick out and I looked even more skeletal than before, so I just really didn't like wearing t-shirts. And then I switched to shirts because shirts were loose and baggy and comfortable. They didn't really sit well on my figure. They kind of hung loose, but at least I couldn't see my body. And as I started to grow used to this, I started to find comfort in shirts and roll back the sleeves because I kind of looked kind of cool with roll back sleeves, at least that's what I thought. Until somebody said my wrists were really skinny, and then one of the boys grabbed my wrist and then showed everyone how small my wrist was in comparison to theirs, and I stopped rolling up my sleeves and started covering them because I was too ashamed of my disgusting bony wrists. I loved winter because in winter you could wear as many layers of clothes as you wanted and no one would think it was weird at all. I loved it, and I remember going to school with my t-shirt, my shirt, my jumper, my blazer, my hoodie and my coat, and I felt so covered up, and I loved it. I loved being hidden, and these clothes added a layer to me, a layer of thickness, a layer of fat that I'd never had before, and I felt normal. I felt less judged, and it was amazing. It was my moment of bliss until people realised my skinny little hands and head were ridiculous in comparison to the bloating levels of clothes that covered my body. This temporary illusion, no matter how brief, was a utopia for me, and I found comfort in this disguise. I found safety from behind this barrier of cloth, and my shame had become the shield that I was more than willing to hide behind for the rest of my life. But as my eating disorder spiraled out of control, I had to go to therapy, and I started to eat again, though this victory was very short-lived because I was left with this scar. My body was this scar that I really didn't like and I couldn't hide it. And although I was supposed to be victorious, I just still felt weak. And whilst I was learning to eat again, everyone else had moved through puberty and started to turn their bodies from boys' bodies to men's bodies and grown taller and got deeper voices. But I didn't hit puberty till I was 15 or 16 because I hadn't had enough food to grow. And I felt completely inferior. People started to call me gay, because I was short, skinny, had a squeaky voice and liked drama. And I believed them because I wasn't masculine in any way, and I couldn't even fathom why any girl would ever look at me in a sexual manner. But then, of course, I realised to be gay you actually have to be attracted to men, which I'm not. So I started thinking of ways to make myself more masculine. I thought, what makes these boys more like men than me? And I realised the gym. Every man goes to the gym. So I was set. I went to the gym solidly for 2 months. I started doing push-ups, I started doing sit-ups, I started doing pull-ups, I started lifting weights, and I felt strong. I felt like a man. And when I stepped on that scale at the end of that 2 months, I was even skinnier than before. I'd worked so hard to become a man, and I was even more pathetic than when I'd started. All I had to show for it was a pathetic two-pack that no one really cared about, and I hated it because I felt so emasculated. Why couldn't I be manly? No matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't be manly and I couldn't be comfortable. And now that I was thinner, I started to realise that when I lay down on my back, my stomach would sink in and I'd feel empty, so I couldn't lay on my back. So then I'd lay on my sides, and then my arms would stick into my ribs and it would be really bony and uncomfortable. And then I couldn't even hug my mum at one point because I didn't want my ribs to stick into her and her to be uncomfortable as well. And I just hated this body of mine because it was just uncomfortable and horrible, and I felt like a cactus that couldn't even be touched, and it was horrible. And I became obsessive, going on scales, shifting my weight to see if I went up or down, and I'd stare in mirrors and look at all the imperfections of my body, and I started to ask myself, why am I doing this? Why have I got this body and why don't I like it? And then I remembered the whole reason I became conscious of my flaws in the first place was because other people had pointed them out to me, and I'd become obsessed with this expectation that I'd set myself, this area that I didn't fit into. The only reason that I'd become like this in the first place was because other people had told me that I wasn't masculine enough. I'd set up this kind of level of masculinity, this false level that I could never attain or reach. And I'd envisioned being a man meant to be 6 foot and muscular. I started to accept that I was never going to be any of those things, and that being a man isn't defined by what type of body you have. And I started to accept this body of mine, and the more I did, the more I felt like a man. And I started to create my own definition of masculinity because I didn't care what anyone else thought. I may not be 6 foot or muscular, and I don't care if I don't reach your expectations of masculinity. I'm not sorry for it. I'm a man who loves his body, and that's all that matters.